I would like to take a moment before we get into today's main episode and to talk about my sponsor for the podcast. Podmatch is a new podcasting site dedicated to all podcasters. The platform helps hosts get connected with potential guests to appear on their show, as well as allow guests to find podcasts that will give them a chance to share their story. Podmatch offers many tools to help organize your page, from to-do lists to episode planning to potentially appearing on a leaderboard. Podmatch has it all. The best part, you have the potential to get paid. And who doesn't like to get paid from home? I like to. With an easy sign up, you can start connecting with podcasters and guests immediately. I have been a part of Podmatch since the beginning of May, and I have got to say that it was the best decision I've ever made because Podmatch helps your podcast grow. It helps you get connected with people that have very interesting, very compelling background stories that are just waiting for their story to be shared. So if you are a host or guest and would like to start building professional relationships, explore more opportunities, and have your story shared, I highly suggest that you sign up with Podmatch today by going to joinpodmatch.com/lethal venom to start expanding your network in seconds. I would like to give another huge thank you to Podmatch for sponsoring this episode. Now on to our main episode, and again, you can sign up at joinpodmatch.com/lethal venom to begin your podcasting journey today. Hello everyone, welcome to the Lethal Venom Podcast, the show where I talk about anything I want with the honest to God truth, no lies told. Today I'm joined by Mr. John Knowlton. Him and his wife have realized and have had an abundant life, and they believe that all of our outcomes are rooted in our thinking. John's career has been bivocational, fully engaged in building businesses and serving part-time as a pastor and teacher. As a jail chaplain, he saw people whose thinking led them way down the wrong path. And as an entrepreneur, he discovered the power of thinking about others first and seeking to create great value. John has partnered to build a wealth management business that managed more than $1 billion of client assets and quote unquote retired at age 51. After a 1 year COVID sabbat, I've been awful with words today. He served CEOs and business owners as a C12 chair, facilitating day-long business retreats. John's focus is helping people think better so that they can fulfill the purpose for which they were made. His book, Thinking for Success 52 Stories That Upgrade Your Thinking About Boost Productivity, Problem Solving, and Relationships, will be released by Morgan James in January of 2026. So I want to give a huge welcome to John. Thank you so much for coming on. I can't wait to have a conversation today.
Well, Noah, I'm glad you stumbled over your words. Now I'm completely relaxed, and so we're going to be cool.
The interview I did beforehand was there was this phrase Adventure Center. It was like a place my guest was a bit owned, and I could not say the name. I screwed up on it like two or three times, and I was like, so it's just gonna be one of those days I can't read. Um,
That's all right.
but kind of very interesting career for being a as a part-time pastor and teacher to being a job as a jail chaplain to running your own and having a really successful business. It's been kind of a crazy ride. So kind of define or share a little bit about how um your early life was and how you kind of got to where you are today.
Sure. How far back would you like me to go, Noah? When you
We can
say
go
early life?
we can just go all the way back to the beginning.
Wow, I don't remember the very beginning. I will tell you a fun story though. I was born in 1969, and ultrasounds either weren't available or they weren't standard, and so the gender or sex of the baby was always a surprise. And my parents just were certain that I was going to be a girl. And I don't know if it's because of, it was a full moon on a Tuesday, or I have no idea, but I showed up and they only had one name picked out, which was Colleen. And they thought that was an appropriate name for me. So I'm a junior. I'm John Jr., named after my dad because they didn't bother to think of a boy's name. They just were so sure that they were having a girl. So I was raised by my two parents, had a really good childhood, and my dad took me to the bank in 1980 And so for people who like have a grasp on economic history, that's when interest rates were really high. We had this period of what's called stagflation in the 70s, and the Federal Reserve chairman was named Paul Volcker, and Volcker was going to beat this inflation by basically kind of putting the economy into a forced stall. And he did that by raising interest rates super high. Mortgages were 18%, business borrowing cost over 20%. It was a really extreme time period. But what that means on the flip side is that savers were making a lot of interest on savings accounts and certificates of deposit. And so at age 11, I had a little bit of money in the bank from lawn mowing and things like that. My dad took me down there and we invested in a CD. I put $500 in a CD that was earning 15.9%. And that means that that money doubled in the 5 years, which is amazing. CDs nowadays are earning 3% or something like that. So that gave me, well, there's really two lessons there. One is my dad cared about me and took an interest in teaching me and helping me manage money well. And the second was it gave me a taste for investing. And so ultimately, down the road, in my 20s, I came into that career of helping other people with their money. But so to take it back, I was raised by good parents who taught me how to invest money.
That's so how did your career kind of going as a pastor and teacher kind of come to be? Was it something that you always wanted to do?
Not really, but I had a great experience in college. So I went to a Central Michigan University, which is a kind of a mid-tier public college. And when I was there, I came in contact with a campus ministry and met these people who were really excited to read the Bible and to kind of have live in intentional community and we did things together. Any case, it was a really wonderful experience. Helped really solidify my young man's faith, and so I decided to go to seminary. That's a professional school for pastors after my bachelor's degree was completed. And while I was there, I took a job as a jail chaplain, and the seminary was in Evanston, Illinois. And so twice a week, I would make the trek out to the western suburbs of Chicago and serve. I served as the Protestant chaplain. There's also a Muslim imam and a Catholic guy who was served the Catholic population. So I was the Protestant jail chaplain. And so I would get to do what's called walkarounds. And so the way that jail was set up is there's kind of a central hallway and there would be doors, big sliding metal doors, and there's a big key about 7 or 8 inches long that I would carry around and unlock the sliding door, and then I could go into a little vestibule, and that would give access to a day room. And there was 8 or 10 or 12 individual cells around that day room. And if they wanted to, the inmates could come up to a door made of bars and talk to me. And as we would have conversations, then if they wanted to, they could put in a services request and request an individual one-on-one meeting with me. And then our meeting room was this tiny little closet, literally a former broom closet. And there was two little folding chairs in there, and I would sit knee to knee with these guys, many of whom were in gangs and had been arrested for and accused of, gang violence and felonies, pretty very serious felonies and things like that. And we'd be in this little closet, and I'd listen to them and offer counsel and prayer and things like that. So it was a year of doing that sort of as, I don't know, think about teachers have student teaching. This was one of the vocational roles I had when I was a student in seminary.
So after you had done that, what was kind of the next steps that you took to for your life. Did you stay there for a long time? Did you kind of figured that this you enjoyed it very much so that you kind of wanted to do this full time? What was kind of the next step that you wanted to do?
Yeah. So seminary is typically a 3-year course of study. So, a 4-year bachelor's degree and then 3 years in the graduate school. I I took an sort of a bivocational path rather than going right into being a full-time pastor. I took small churches that couldn't pay very much. And so I would have a job as well. And so I'm the kind of guy who has quit lots of perfectly good jobs in order to go start my own thing. And at that time, both in Chicago and then later when I moved to West Virginia, I was running painting businesses. So painting houses, painting apartments, things like that. And so I would run a business and run a crew. I'd hire people to work for me and teach them how to paint and what have you, and then serve these churches. So from Chicago, then I went to West Virginia and served this tiny, tiny little church on the bank, on one bank of the Ohio River. No, this church didn't have running water. There was an old outhouse there. And so it was real country. And it was a ways out there. I lived in the city of Huntington, but the church was way out in the country. And so there was maybe a dozen people the first day I showed up there. So I did that for a year and then came back to Michigan and did serve a couple of church United Methodist churches. And since 2003, I've been a part-time staff pastor at a church in the city of Kalamazoo. So that's where I've been living for more than 25 years.
How did you kind of become an entrepreneur? And tell me a little bit about the progress that you did to make a very successful business.
Sure. Well, I think you're born an entrepreneur. I know that there are courses of study at universities and business schools in entrepreneurship, but the the most successful entrepreneurs I know are people who either they're unemployable because they have so many ideas that it's hard for them to work for somebody else, or they just quit jobs in order to start their own thing. So I think it's almost like a gene or something. Entrepreneurs are people who see things that don't yet exist, and therefore other people can't see them. And so people think we're crazy or deluded or things like this. So entrepreneurs, I think, are born and not made. They can certainly be trained and skill up in different ways, but I was just born an entrepreneur. So I said when I was 11, I had money in a bank account from mowing grass. I just walk up and down the street and look for long grass and find people that needed their grass mowed. And what I found out is if you mow it once, they like that so much they just keep hiring you. And so I started cutting grass. I would sell things door to door. You could sell cards and things like this door to door. I did that and have just almost always had my own gig. And, um, and so to get into the wealth management business, though, I had been a full-time United Methodist pastor, and my wife at the time was convinced that ministry was ruining our marriage, and that's actually a common complaint from the spouses of pastors that it's a pretty consuming job. And so I was looking for work, man, and I was back to painting apartment buildings. We were painting apartments, the inside apartments to buy groceries. And I was applying for every kind of job you could think that should have been available to me, working at a YMCA camp or Catholic Family Services or things like this. And knowing no one would hire me. And so my mom sent me a VHS videotape. I don't know if you remember those. You'd put them in the recorder and watch them, and
Mm,
then you got to be nice, be kind, and rewind, right? Go back to the old school technology.
yep.
And it was a recruiting videotape from a investment management company, and I watched it and I applied, and they didn't hire me But the process of going through their hiring and selection criteria got me interested in the field. And so then I found another firm and I started my own business. It didn't they hired me, if you will. In other words, they sponsored me to get my licenses, but there was no salary. In fact, my first paychecks were negative because they charged me rent for my office and my technology, computer and stuff like that. So it was a it was I came to the field out of desperation because nothing else was available. And it turned out I was okay at it and ultimately co-founded a firm that got pretty big. When I sold my interest to my partners, we had 12 partners in 3 states, 5 offices, and they've continued to grow. They're approaching $4 billion of client assets now. So we built something good that's been durable.
I think it's how do you find success? Because everyone tends to have a different kind of definition of success, where they kind of success comes from hard work, and another thinks that success just comes from one thing blowing up and
Mm.
it does well, and then after that it kind of goes down. How do you define success?
Yeah, so I define success this way. I believe everybody was created with a purpose, and success is the process of getting closer and closer to the purpose for which you were made. And so, lots of definitions of success actually mean like you accomplished a goal or you've successfully terminated your endeavors. And I'll just give this example. My wife and I both want to be great spouses. She wants to be a great wife. I want to be a great husband. And there is no point of arrival. So success doesn't mean that we're going to wake up one day and said, nailed it, baby, and then quit trying. Rather, success means I need to continue to understand how I can be a better and better husband. How can I more effectively serve my wife? How can I be the spouse that she needs? And then fulfill that, work to act in such a way that I'm getting closer and closer and closer to what she needs. And and there's this concept from geometry called an asymptote, and I know not everybody remembers all the vocabulary from geometry class, but this one stuck in my brain. And an asymptote is a line that continuously approaches but never touches another line. So you could say go halfway to the wall, and then you could say go halfway again, go halfway again. That would be in a vision of an asymptote where you're getting closer and closer and closer, but you never actually touch it. No matter how close you are, you could cover half the distance and never touch the wall. So for me, Noah, that's success is whatever it is that you're created to be, to first of all, discover what's your purpose. And then secondly, is to act in such a way that you get better and better, closer and closer to that ideal for which you were made.
Lord, I hadn't heard asymptote in so long. I remember that word. I just didn't remember what it was. And then when you said that, I thought, oh yeah, that's what that is. Oh, geometry was not my best class. So, but I'm like, I remember that phrase. If someone said, do you remember learning about acetotes? I'd be like, oh yeah, yeah, I remember that. Okay, what was it about? I know the word.
No, I remember such strange things. Like I cannot remember, my best friend's birthday. I think it's in November, but it might be October. And since it's October, I might have missed it. Really. But I can remember Avogadro's number. Do you remember that from chemistry?
I don't think we ever learned that.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure you did. It's the number of molecules in a mole at standard temperature and pressure. And it's 6.02 times 10 to the 23rd power. That's the number of molecules in this, in a box or whatever. So I can remember that, but Trevor's birthday, it's in the fall. That's about all I know.
I don't think we learned that because if you said that and even said that number, I don't think we learned it. I don't think
Didn't
we got
sound
that
familiar,
far.
huh?
I
Maybe
think
not.
we learned basic, very basic chemistry.
Did you learn how to blow stuff up?
No. They wouldn't have trusted us to blow stuff up. We would have blown the school up.
Okay, well, maybe that's a good
So
idea.
my grade wasn't the best to do that. No. So yeah, I'm trying to think. I remember from chemistry the elements. I could do the elements. I don't think I could do it now, but I think name a good bit of them. I think if you just gave me a map and gave me about 5 hours, I could learn it. But I remember them pretty well. It wasn't it wasn't it wasn't too difficult to learn. But that's about the only thing I was good at in chemistry. Everything else, no. We had to do like I can't even remember. It was taking formulas and I can't remember what we were supposed to do. This is just how much I paid attention. I don't know. We had to do something with formulas, but that's
Maybe
all I
looking at
know.
the valences and things like that of the different elements, and as you combine things,
Yeah, I think we had to combine stuff and valence. I feel like I've heard that word before. I don't know. It was like take water. So it's like take H2O and then take O2, and then I think they wanted us to add it together or something.
yeah, and you'd get H2O2, hydrogen peroxide.
Oh, I was about to, I thought it was I was thinking it was like H2O4. I thought you added like the
So
never mind.
you're remembering a drink. So or a joke rather. So what's H2O? It's water. What's
Yeah.
H2O2? Hydrogen peroxide. What's H2O4? Drinking. So the four
Mm.
being FOR. What's the purpose of it?
Yeah, let's just say I
Yeah,
wasn't good at chemistry.
chemistry nerd jokes, man. They're very exciting.
The chemistry in me's not shining today.
It's not shining today.
It's not.
Well, you mentioned the periodic table. So my dad just turned 80, Noah, and I gave him a thermometer. And then the next gift I gave him was a dime from 1945, which is the year he was born. And the next gift I gave him was a periodic table, and it was a riddle for him. So the dime from 1945 is commonly called a mercury dime. The fluid inside of the thermometer is mercury, and the number of the element mercury is 80. He was 80 years old.
Oh, that's kind of like oh, that's like good context clues. That's a good one. I like that. It kind of all
Well,
ties together.
it takes a special person to appreciate that, but my dad is that type of person.
I'm trying to think what number. I have to go look at the periodic table because I don't remember. Because I'm 23 and I'm trying to remember what my element would be for 23.
Titanium is 22.
I know the names of them, but I don't. The
Vanadium,
vanadium.
yeah. Yeah, that's used to make steel. That's mixed with iron to make steel.
Yeah, and then we had to do something with one thing I did remember was something with the so for like for oxygen we looked at the atomic number which was 8 and we had to like put points around it or something like to symbolize it was 8 dots. I can't remember exactly what we did there. And
Okay.
then we did something with the other number that's like the decimal number. See, I can remember like bits, but I can't tell you how to do it.
Okay.
We just went into a whole chemistry lesson.
Wow, that was awesome, man. Chemistry
We
with Noah.
if you want to know how chaotic and just how off course we get, that's how we went from Chaplain life to chemistry. That's how
That's
far we
it.
go on this show. That's
Yes, sir. I love it.
um one thing that I kind of find interesting from this, and I don't know if every parent is like this, but it says here that you do tell your kids how much money you make. Is that like uh something all parents should do? Should every parent share how much income that they have coming in, or do you feel like it's personal preference of whether or not it's needed for kids to know how much income that parents are making or how much money's coming in?
Yeah, I would say it's very, very rare. So I worked with hundreds of households, different families, and very, very few of them would kind of open the kimono that much to their children. But my wife and have adopted a pretty radical openness with our adult children, anyways, which most of them are now adults. But we've become convinced in what's called the shirt sleeves proverb. Shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves in 3 generations. In other words, in some entrepreneurial families, the first generation will make some money, the second generation will spend the money, and the third generation will lose the money. So shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves, meaning, sort of manual work. Then you you sort of attain some level of material success and wealth and get out of manual work, but then by the third generation they're back to manual work because they haven't learned to manage the money or retain it or what have you. And so we decided we wanted to break the shirt sleeves paradigm and not have our family experience that. And in fact, we've we've decided we want to try to preserve and grow our family wealth to be a force for good for generations. And so to accomplish that, we have invited our adult children into a process of what we call shared governance. So shared governance means they are joining us in making decisions about money. And so rather than this being mom and dad's money and we'll do with it whatever we want until we die and then drop a bunch of money on our kids, they're involved in the decision making process right now. And in fact, I just this weekend sent out a Q3 update. I told them how much money did we make in investments, how much did we pay in taxes, how much did we pay in tithe, and progress on a couple of projects some real estate development projects we have in process. And yeah, so my kids know exactly how much we make. I show them the investment statements, all the stuff. And it it's not that just doesn't come out of nowhere. So we have some context for it. And I've taken them through an extensive process of developing a family mission and vision and values. And so as we've done this work together of defining how do we want to show up as a family in the world, and then how do we want our money to reflect our values and make an impact on the society in which we live, it's really brought us much closer together. It's been a powerful experience, Noah, to have these frank conversations about our livelihood. And I would encourage people to do it. I'm not going to tell people to do it because I think it takes a little bit of skill because you've got to manage the the sort of the interpersonal issues and relationship issues. So money tends to magnify whatever's in you. And if there's anxiety in you, it's going to make that bigger. If there's tension in your family, it's going to make that bigger. And so being open and frank, like my wife and I have decided to be with our kids, should be done in a context of a trusting, um, open relationship. But the benefits of going through that process are that we have, like I said, good relationships with our kids, and they're learning to manage money now. And we all are operating on a shared set of values. So rather than writing some extensive trust document so that after we die, it sort of handcuffs our kids into spending money a certain way and trying to exercise control from the grave. Instead, what we're doing is having conversations, making real life decisions between, now and 30, 40, 50 years from now when we die, so that they adopt and learn the values and essentially the shared values that we've developed together continue to and are perpetuated.
Yeah, this seems to be more of a personal preference to me about kids and parents telling their kids about the income. My parents tended to be kind of the normal household. They didn't really share like how much money was coming in or anything. They tried to teach me to save money because we were kind of running low on money, but in actuality they had money saved up, but they tend to save it up for emergency purposes only and for like if something were to happen that I could have money for that.
Mm.
I feel like with this new generation of parents, they're have big started to become just more open and they really kind of just share everything about what's going on. I don't have kids. I'm not a parent, so I can't exactly give good advice about should you tell your parent kids how much money you have or should you not. I, but I would say I would probably, I guess, wait until they're adults because I don't think they really need to know early early on because some kids could hear that and they steal it because some kids can get mischievous. Some kids like to be very nosy. If they knew that they had if you had this much money that's laying around the house, you never know. They could try to sneak into it, try to steal money from it to where when you actually need the emergency money, it's very low. So I, if you trust your kid enough to tell them about it. I mean, it's your family, it's your household. You just do whatever you feel is best. I just think that some kids, being how young they are and how mischievous that they can be and can get into stuff and get into trouble. And I just don't think that would be such a good idea because then they could go to school and share it with everyone. And then it could just lead to problems. So unless you trust them, I would say wait till they're an adult to then tell them, oh, by the way, this is how much money we have coming in.
Yeah. Yeah, I've developed the whole process for how you kind of walk them through the steps of you don't start with, hey, this is how much money we have. But yeah, I think trust is key, but the trust is developed in part by sharing things that could hurt you. You need to be vulnerable, and that means that you have to tell your secrets, but that should be done in the context where it's a known risk and a manageable risk. So yeah. And by the way, I don't keep my money laying around the house. So if anybody wants to break into my house and steal money, there's very little money to steal. It's in the bank and in investment accounts. So um, my kids, even if they were not trustworthy, they wouldn't be able to steal much.
When it comes to that, do you worry about hacks happening into your account where hackers and just really anyone can really hack into the account and steal the money out of it? Is it safer to have money saved up in a safe, or is it actually safer to have it in the bank in in a savings account? What do you recommend for people that maybe are saving money, but they don't know if they should keep it with themselves or put it up in the bank?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think banks are pretty safe. The government has made it really clear that they won't let banks won't let depositors' money get damaged or get taken away in bankruptcies and things like that. So there's what's called federal depositors insurance, which insures us to keep our money safe. And then the same thing on the securities. There's what's called securities investor protection, which is insurance on the brokerage accounts. And then the a downside of keeping money in your safe is that you're going to lose purchasing power. So inflation is where prices generally rise in the economy. And if you've got $10,000 in a safe, well, $10,000 that you, whatever you could buy for $10,000 this year, next year, that $10,000 won't buy as much stuff. And so we need to be investing the money so that we have an opportunity to keep up with and maybe exceed the rate of inflation. So money in a safe, that might be okay for a little bit of money in case of some kind of catastrophic emergency, but um, it's not a long-term strategy for keeping up with the cost of living.
Did you provide financial education to your kids early on in age, or did you kind of wait later and when they were a little older to actually introduce the financial responsibility?
Yeah. So we would give our kids allowance when they were quite young and require them to cover certain of their expenses, and that would expand over time to where, by the time they're in high school, they're responsible for their own meals and gas and whatnot with money that, we've provided, but they've got to cover those things out of that, learn to manage it. We also have them pay tithe on all the income that they get. And then I start them investing as soon as they have a job in their 401k or in a Roth IRA. So we've done quite a bit of financial education for sure. And then I have them go with me when I do deals. My one of my sons was my bag man. He carried my briefcase. Um, I was buying and selling a lot of businesses when he was in his early teens and later. And I'd put a $250,000 check in the briefcase and tell him keep it safe until we got to the bank, that kind of thing. So, yeah, that I think there's a lot that's caught as well as taught. And so, one of the concepts that I talk about is um, the important question about dinner isn't what's for dinner, it's what's dinner for. In other words, what is the purpose of dinner? And so we endeavored to have dinner together as a family virtually every night. If we had an early event right after, a school event or sporting event that was early, we would eat dinner really way too early for your stomach. 4:30, 5 o'clock, something like this sometimes. But the point wasn't the food. The point was the conversation and the values transmission. So children catch they a lot more is caught than is taught. So as we're sitting around the table, they're listening to mom and dad talk. We're talking about our day. How did we interact in the world that day? Who are the people that are important to us? And so the kids are picking up values in the conversation. And then we would have it go around the circle, around the table rather, and ask everybody about their day and what did they need tonight. And so they're learning they have an important role in the family and in the world, and that they're important enough to be asked, what do you need tonight? And so the values around money are caught just like the values around family and communication are caught. So we would explicitly teach them and tell them things, but they would also get to hear mom and dad talking about money, talking about how did we do business, talking about the work that we've done.
As I mentioned in your intro that you have a book coming out very beginning of next year, Thinking for Success. What was the main motivation and main reasoning to release a book? Sharing stories that you found to be very impactful and would really be revolutionary and success.
Yeah. So if for those who are viewers, there's a picture of the book on the wall behind me. So no, I didn't set out to write a book, and I certainly didn't do it for money. Between editing and other costs, you have to sell an awful lot of books to make it make a dollar or two a copy back, right?
Mhm.
But the reason I wrote the book was really out of desperation. When I was leading teams and had employees working for me, I noticed that they would keep making the same mistakes, whether it was at work or how they talk to customers, or how they related with their boyfriends and girlfriends or spouses. And I would, I started by telling people what to do. And that would work for that time, but it didn't necessarily stick for the next time. And then I decided, okay, I'm going to give them principles. And I could share a principle, a theory, if you will, and they either didn't necessarily know how to apply it or they forget it because it was abstract. And no, I just stumbled on the idea of telling stories. And somebody smart recently told me that stories are cognitively privileged, which I take to mean that we pay attention to stories. And so I would tell a story in a staff meeting, and then we would process it together, talk about it. How did we know anybody else that had kind of had a similar circumstance? And then how might we apply this learnings from the story together? And then we'd give it a name. And then in the future, we could simply refer to the name of that story and it would bring the lesson to mind for everybody. And I found that when we would process stories together, that people stopped making the same mistakes. They were able to advance, they were able to grow in their career and in their effectiveness. And then I realized I'm not smart enough to remember all these stories, so I'm going to start writing them down. And then at some point, I had 40 of them. And I got this idea that if I had 52 of them, that would be a story each week for staff meetings for a year's worth of meetings. And so I kept writing the stories and gathering them and collecting them. And I got something like 70 altogether. And then I asked some editors to help me select the best 52. And that's what we've got in the book. So the book is really designed, Noah, for leaders, managers, small group leaders, people who run businesses or nonprofit organizations to use with their teams to talk through um, stories together so that their thinking improves and then their behaviors will follow and their outcomes get better.
What do you plan for the future? When the book comes out, do you plan on writing any more self-help books about finance? Do you tend to launch any campaigns? What do you see for future you, or what would you like to really be the outcome?
Yeah, so a couple things. One is I just want to get the book out to as many people as possible because I think it can really help them. I saw it work in my businesses. So I am doing a lot of podcast interviews. That's really fun, actually. I enjoy it a lot. It helps to sharpen my thinking when I get asked good questions by great hosts. And I'll use the book when I do speaking. That'll be a giveaway for the people that are in attendance at the. I speak at business conferences and meetings like that. So the one problem with writing books is it sort of becomes habitual. And so I have two more books that are outlined and I need to work the process on this one first and then get to the other ones. But writing a book tends to sharpen your thinking and going on podcasts does the same thing. And I like to be clear and crisp in my thought process. And so books are a great way. Writing a book is a great way to help you do that.
What advice do you have for people that are, especially for young adults, because there's a lot of young adults, especially now, with how everything's going up in price and everything's just really just extravagant, costly. It's very expensive to live. What advice do you have on ways that they can save money but have a sustainable, livable life with everything so high?
Yeah. So there's two sides of a cash flow statement or a profit and loss statement. And people do tend to focus on the expense side. So you asked about saving money, and I'm not an expert at that because um, yeah, I'm not an expert at that. What I, but what I think is ignored often is the income side of the balance of the cash flow statement. And so I would encourage people to improve their skills so that they can make more money. So wherever you're working, so that would be the first thing. If you're not working, start a job, get a job, any job, start any job because That's your key to the next better job. And that's the key to the next better job. But wherever you're working, find out what your boss does. Try to assess how are they how are they managing meetings? How are they getting their work done? How do they talk to their boss? How do they talk to customers? How do they talk to other departments in the company? So basically, I think about it like this. They're paying you to do your job, but they're also paying you to learn and get intel on your next job. And if you can find something that you could do that your boss is currently doing, ask them if you can do it. Now, some people say, "Why would I do a job that they're not paying me to do?" I'm, I'm telling you, this works. If you can make your boss's life easier, you're pulling work down from your boss so that he or she can be more effective at the remaining pool of work. You are going to be the first person promoted because you are improving the company by improving yourself. You've boosted your own skills, you've raised your own skills and your value to the company, and that makes you more valuable. See, there's a process of exchanging value. I'm not just selling my time. I'm providing value to the company, and they're providing value to me in the form of a paycheck. If I can provide more value to the company or its customers, then I have a reasonable expectation to receive more value in the form of higher salary or higher hourly wage. And so the way to survive and thrive in an environment of rising prices is to raise the value that you give.
Well, John, I appreciate you so much for coming on and, sharing this great advice with me because I think this is a very important conversation to have with just how our economy is now. And I know a lot of people are struggling financially. And so hearing this, I think would be very beneficial. Um, when the book is slated to come out early January, um, tell my listeners a little bit about when the book comes out, where they'll be able to find it. Do you plan on having it online order only? Can they buy it in stores? Where will your book be all available?
Sure. Well, no, the book's available anywhere people like to buy books. It'd be available through local bookstores, on the online retailers. And this is something I've learned through this process of publishing a book. And some of the online retailers that have bricks and mortar stores use their pre-orders. In other words, how many people have pre-ordered the book as a means to decide how many books they're going to stock in their physical stores. So Barnes and Noble, for example, is a great partner for us. And if enough people pre-order the book, then the book will be available in more physical stores. So pre-orders do matter, especially from the stores that have both online and physical retail locations.
If people would like to learn more information about this, and maybe if they have questions about finance that they didn't really get to hear today, or they would just like to maybe learn some ideas or stuff, where can they best contact you at, and where can they also follow you to be able to um, stay connected with you?
Sure, sure. The book is called Thinking for Success, and we also have a website by that same name, thinkingforsuccess.com. And then the company, the media company that my wife and I have that produce the book as well as lots of other content is called Abundant Thought Revolution, and it's on all the socials. Abundant Thought Revolution, and I put out all kinds of stuff that I think is cool. So I'll give you an example. I had lunch yesterday at a conference, and I was sitting next to a guy who was a motivational speaker. No, I don't know if you've ever sat next to a motivational speaker, but you don't have to do much talking because they got a lot of things to say. And it occurred to me while I was listening to the motivational speaker at lunch that there might be a really important role of being a motivational listener. Because Noah, when the main topic with a motivational speaker is whatever he wants to talk about, but as a motivational listener, the main topic would be what's important to you. And I'm not a motivational speaker, but I think I might try to become a motivational listener. In other words, to do my very best to make what's important to the other person important to me, to listen with the intention of understanding the person instead of listening with the intention of responding in such a way that you think I'm smart or witty or something like that. And so I recorded a piece about being a motivational listener today. And those kinds of things are posted on our Abundant Thought Revolution site all the time.
Well, I will make sure to put all of his links down there. The Abundant Thought Revolution website will be down there as well. That's kind of where everything is. His book, his upcoming book will be on there for pre-order. It's available for pre-order now. I'll also put his social media accounts down there as well, so that you can stay connected with him. And if you have questions, you can feel free to reach out to him, and also just kind of help support him on this journey, and be just kind of see what he has coming up and continue to follow him. Feel free to follow me on social media as well, on Instagram and TikTok at Lethal Venom Podcast, as well as Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube at Noah's Podcast on there. So feel free to follow any of those platforms to keep updates about the show podcast. Feel free to listen to Lethal Venom wherever you get your podcasts from, on all the major platforms: Spotify, Apple, Amazon, iHeartRadio, YouTube, Pandora. Feel free to check out any of those. Plus, I'm on others, on basically all the podcasting platforms. So feel free to follow it so that you'll get notified of when new episodes drop. Thank you all for tuning in today. Hope you all have a great rest of your day. Be safe, and I'll see you on the next episode of Lethal Venom.